brother of the more famous Walt Disney and actual financer of Walt's endeavors, once said, "It's not hard to make decisions when you know what your values are." Why do you think he said that? Anyone?
Because the values help to guide the behavior.
Correct. Values inform our actions. They also inform our goals. Basically, what you value, you create. So what are values? Anyone know what a value is? Have a definition in your head?
It's what you hold to be very important to yourself.
Exactly. They are a set of beliefs and ideas that affect the way we behave, and they're what we hold dear, what we decide are important and worthy, and we want to spend time on. Now, some people get a little confused with values versus ethics and morals. Don't do that. Ethics and morals have an implication of either right or wrong. Values just are. For example, beauty may be a value. Beauty is neither right nor wrong. It just is. In fact, Albert Einstein, you may have heard of him before, famous physicist, he once said that his values were kindness, beauty, and truth. None of those are right or wrong. They just are. Now, how does values affect leadership? We'll put that down, so I'm not pointing at you with a pen. Someone once said, "Ideas are a dime a dozen, but people who put them into action are priceless." Those priceless people are leaders. Leaders embody the value of the team, the organization. They express their values by how they behave, how they talk, how they explain things. And leaders, they must understand values in three different places. They need to understand their own personal values. They need to understand the values of the organization that they're serving. But they also need to understand the values of their individual team members. Because if those get into conflict, the team can fall apart. So this is where values are really important in leadership. So one way that a leader instills values in a team is by recognizing and rewarding team members who do supportive behaviors for the values. So a Toastmasters club decides it's got values, or even Microsoft decides it's got integrity as one of its values. What happens then is when team members show that value, they have behaviors that show integrity, for example, they get rewarded. They get promotions, they get little plaques, they get some sort of reward. But then when there's a team member who somehow does, we'll call it non-supportive behavior around that value, what happens then? You don't want to use the word punish, use the word correct. Leaders correct team members that show non-supportive behaviors. And that correction could come in the form of a reprimand, it could come in the form of getting fired, or it could just come in the form of guiding that person. You know, this behavior is really non-supportive for what we want as a company. Maybe you thought about doing this, getting the same result, doing this other behavior. So this is how leaders use values to get the job done. In conclusion, values are an important part of the leadership role. Successful leaders continually develop and adhere to a set of values that evolve from what they believe is important and relevant. They earn respect from their team members by actually embodying their values, by walking their talk. They inspire their team to adopt their values too, often by being a role model. And their values, as well as the values of the organization they serve, becomes a compass guiding them toward their goals. Well, a manager is a leader, So it depends on, what is the difference that you're making here, the distinction?
Oh, you don't see a distinction? That's a whole speech in itself.
Well, I mean, leader is sort of a generic term. Managers are leaders. CEOs are leaders. So it depends on, which leader you're talking about.
To make it very simple, a leader kind of motivates and sets a tone and clarifies the values, and the manager makes sure that that's what people are following.
Yeah.
They do the correcting. They
Right.
do the...
Well, in the context of what I was talking about, though, the manager is taking on a leadership role. So it's just a level of leadership. But the way I was looking at it is when a leader takes on a leadership role, whether at a mid-level or a higher level, one of the most important things to do is realize what are my values, and are my values in alignment with the organization's values as a whole. For example, if I value integrity and then I go and work for, let's say, a tobacco company, I might have an issue there, because part of what a tobacco company needs to do is sell something that eventually kills people. And integrity isn't a big value there, I would think. So does that kind of answer your question?
Sure.
Okay. There's lots of different exercises one can do, but what I've found useful for me is to take a look at your life so far and what are the themes. For example, one of my values is creativity, and that's shown up in like everything I do. I like to sing, I like to dance, I like to cook, and I never follow a recipe. A recipe is never safe in my hands. Because I'm very creative, that's a value of mine. So if you look at your life and see what the themes are, the values start showing, because like I said in the speech, values inform your actions. So if you don't know what your values are, take a look at your actions and work backwards. I think it depends on what the goals are. For example, Apple computers. One of their values is beauty. I mean, you look at almost every Apple product and their form and function, they want both. Whereas you look at Microsoft, they don't really care what it looks like as long as it sort of works. So it really depends on what. Now, personally, if I were to say, one value that all technology should have, they don't always have it, it would be innovation. That would be my preference. I think it depends on the level the leader's at and how strongly they adhere to their own values. Because a leader can be in a company whose values don't match their own, and they can do one of two things. They can stand their ground and try to influence up to change the organization, or they can decide to leave the organization. So it really depends on the person and what level they are at.